when we say infiltration, there are two aspects, right? One is the instantaneous infiltration and the other is the cumulative infiltration. So which one is capital F?
Cumulative infiltration.
Cumulative infiltration. Very good. So of course you can look at it just from the units. You can say F of t is given as K times T. K is the hydraulic conductivity, which has units of length per unit time. Multiplied by time, you will get a number in terms of length, right? Which automatically tells you it's not a rate, right? So even the very name, so I have the instantaneous infiltration rate. So therefore you expect something which will have units of time in it. And the other one is just the cumulative infiltration. Okay. So one small f is your is your instantaneous infiltration rate. Therefore, so you should pay attention to these things, right? So and these are simple tricks that are hidden in the very words. Wherever you see rate, it must have something to do with time in it, right? So therefore that's the way, one of the ways that you can you know, sometimes, you know, you have these multiple choice answers. You know, the question will have the word rate in it, different answers will be given, all of them may have the same numbers, but they will have different units. It's a way of trying to find out whether you know what the units of that particular term that is being asked is. If it says rate, then it is expected that you understand that there must be a time component in that, and therefore it will usually be something per unit time, right? So the flow rate, when I say flow rate, I mean cubic meters per second, for example, right? Or if okay, we usually say velocity, but that again is the rate of change of, you know, location as a function of time. So that's how we talk about velocity. Or if you think of acceleration, that's again a rate at which velocity is changing, all right, and so on. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, okay, so this capital F is the cumulative infiltration, right? So even if you don't know whether it is cumulative or infiltration rate, by looking at the equation you get a hint, because there's K times T, right? So therefore you know it has a unit of length, not length per time. Therefore it must not be instantaneous infiltration rate, it must be cumulative infiltration. Anyway, so this capital F is the cumulative infiltration. Now, if you look at this equation, the one that we derived last class, I'll not go back into the derivation. We'll just, I'll start off from this, the derived expression that we obtained. So this F of t, capital F of t, you will see that it appears both on the left-hand side over here, oops, and over here in the right-hand side, right? So it appears on both sides of the equation. So whenever you have this kind of an equation where I have the same expression occurring on both sides, then it's not so easy to solve. So it's right. So therefore you have to adopt some kind of an iterative approach to solve this. So one of the simplest iterative approach is to use what is called the method of successive substitution. You start off with an initial guess, you put that in, solve it, then you get a corrected value, a new value, right? You put that in again, and then you solve it again. And then you keep doing that until you reach a point where when you put in a number, the number that you get out of the equation is the same as the number that you put in. Then you can say that, you know, your solution has converged, right? That's one way of checking whether your solution is converged. Okay. So in this particular case, if I were to adopt the method of successive substitution, what would be a good first guess to make? Can anybody think of what would be a good first guess? Anybody? No clue? There's a clue in the equation. So what I'm saying is, to solve this equation, I make an initial guess of f of t. Okay. I take that initial guess, put it into the equation. Which side of the equation do I put it in? I put it into the right hand side. I put this initial guess of f of t into the right hand side over here. Once I put that in, everything in the equation is known. K is known, T is known, psi is known, delta theta is known. And then this expression also becomes known because I've made an initial guess of f of t. So once I know everything in this equation, you can solve this equation, right? So I put in an initial guess of f of t and solve this equation. I'll get a new value of f of t, okay? Which, if it is the same as your original guess, then you're done. Okay, but assume that this is your first trial. You make this first trial, you get, when you put that number into the initial number f of t into the equation, you will get an answer. That becomes your second trial. You again put that back into the equation and solve for it again. You keep repeating this process until the f of t that you put in and the f of t that you get out of the equation are very close, or are similar or very close. That's, you can have some criteria. If in two successive iterations you get a number that is almost the same, right? Maybe in the third or fourth decimal place it differs. Then you say, you know what, I've converged, so I'll stop at that point. Okay, so with that background, if I ask you what would be a good first trial to make, good first guess to make, what would you say?
KT or something more than KT.
KT, right? A good first guess would be to just put in the value KT, right? What does that mean? F of t equal to KT means the suction component of infiltration you're ignoring. That's what that means, right? If I say f of t equal to KT, that means psi is either psi is 0 or delta theta is 0, which means I'm ignoring whatever infiltration happens because of the suction head. You're saying, let us assume as a first guess that infiltration is happening only due to gravity. Then f of t will be equal to k times t, right? So you make that as your first guess, put that in, you'll solve for it, you'll get another answer for f of t. You again put that number back in, again solve it, and keep repeating it until your method converges. Is that okay? All right. Any questions on this? Yes, I think somebody had did anybody have a question? Okay, so now the question, one of the questions that you may have is, for a given soil sample, okay, for a given soil sample, how do we know these different parameters? How do we know psi, k, even maybe porosity, etc., right? Because all of that is, so for instance, if I tell you a given if I give you a certain soil sample and ask you to solve this problem, you'll say, okay, it's a certain soil sample. I need to know what this sample's hydraulic conductivity is. I need to know what the suction head of this soil is. I need to know what the porosity of that soil is, because porosity, what is this delta theta? Delta theta is simply eta, which is the porosity, minus what?
Theta.
Not theta. Theta
Theta
suffix.
I. Initial.
Theta subscript I. This theta subscript I is the initial moisture content of the soil sample. Okay, which we'll assume that you know. Right. In order to do this, you need to, so you need to, if I just give you a soil sample, you'll ask me so many questions. You'll say, hey, I need to know what is psi, I need to know what is k, I need to know what is eta, which is the porosity. I also need to know what the initial moisture content is. Only if I have all of these pieces of information, I can solve this equation, right? Without that, I can't. So now here, there is a certain, maybe about how many years ago, 60, 70 years ago, there was an experiment done by a couple of people, Brooks and Corey. Okay, they conducted an experiment to try to find out if there's any relationship between, they wanted to find out if there's a relationship between psi and k and what is it, theta, the moisture content, all of these different parameters. They wanted to find out if there is any connection between, in fact, I should say, they wanted to see what the role of the moisture content is in changing the psi. Okay, so think about this carefully. If I have, okay, I'll ask a direct question. If I have moisture content equal to porosity, what will psi be in that soil sample? if I have, listen carefully, if I have moisture content equal to porosity, what will the suction head in that sample be?
0.
0. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Which means what? When all my voids are completely filled, when theta equal to porosity, when moisture content equal to porosity, means every void inside that soil sample has been completely filled with water. So therefore, there's no scope for suction head anymore, right? So all the suction head suction head is no longer a part of this soil sample, because the soil sample has been completely saturated with water. Okay. Now, if theta is 0, what do you expect the suction head to be? You expect the suction head to be the maximum possible for that soil sample, right? Because all the voids are completely empty. If all the voids are completely empty, all those surfaces of the soil particles are free to accept water, or in other words, are free to attract water towards themselves through the electrostatic forces or whatever it is, right? So that would be when theta is 0, you would expect the maximum suction head. And when theta is equal to porosity, you expect minimum, or in other words, 0 suction head. But in between 0 and maximum, there's some variation, right? It would be interesting to know how this suction head varies as a function of theta, right? And it's also similarly, it would also be interesting to know how this hydraulic conductivity varies as a function of theta. Okay, so this experiment was done. We'll not get into the details of the experiment. I'll just try to explain to you what was found from it. They came up with a parameter called effective saturation, right? In this experiment, which was conducted, I'll just write down the name of the people who conducted the experiment. The experiment was conducted by Brooks and Corey. These two scientists conducted the experiment, Brooks and Corey, sometime in the 60s. Okay, and they found out that this effective saturation S subscript E, effective saturation, is somehow the parameter that controls what is happening in terms of the suction head and the hydraulic conductivity in a given soil sample. Okay, so now in this expression, if you look at it, I have introduced a new parameter that you do not know so far. You know what theta is. Theta is the moisture content. You know what eta is. It's the porosity. Now, in both the numerator and denominator, you see this additional term theta r. Okay, so this theta r is what is called the residual moisture content. Okay, this theta r, which is the residual moisture content, is simply this. If I completely allow all the water inside the soil sample to drain away, whatever moisture is left behind in the between the interparticular voids of the soil sample, that is what is called the residual moisture content. Okay, which means the water that is being held back by the forces of surface tension, okay, that is what we call the residual moisture content after the sample has been completely drained. Okay, so then whatever water is left over is or whatever moisture is left over, that's a more appropriate way of saying it, is what we call the residual moisture content. Okay, so theta is the given for any given moisture content minus theta r. So the residual moisture content, if you remove the residual moisture content from the overall moisture content, what you are left with, okay, is this numerator theta minus theta r. And similarly, I have eta, which is the overall porosity, minus theta r. Okay, so now when you look at this expression, can somebody tell me what is the range of values for this effective saturation? What is the range of values for this effective saturation? Can anybody guess what it could be? It's fairly straightforward. Come on. What is the lowest value that SE can have?
0.
0. All right. What is the highest value it can have?
1.
1. Right. So this effective saturation is saying that if only a portion of the voids are filled, okay, if only a portion of the voids are filled, how much of it can actually contribute towards moisture moving inside the soil sample? That's what it kind of means in a vague physical sense. If you were to look at this effective saturation, that's what it implies. Okay, so this effective saturation typically ranges between 0 and 1. Okay, so not typically, it can only take values between 0 and 1. Okay, so that is this the residual moisture content, and eta minus theta r is also what is called the effective porosity. Okay, so I realize that we are introducing new terminology over here. Eta minus theta r, the denominator that you see, that's also sometimes called the effective porosity, right? Because eta is all the voids, theta r is all the voids, those are which are, you know, all the moisture rather, which is being retained by the forces of surface tension. So the total porosity minus the portion of the moisture content that will get retained by the soil sample by virtue of what is that, surface tension. You can think of it as this difference between this eta minus theta r. You can think of it as the effective porosity, right? Because that is the porosity that is contributing towards the whether it is a movement of moisture within the soil, right, or the ability of the soil to transmit water. It is this theta e, this effective porosity, that is contributing towards the movement of soil within the saturated or the porous medium. Okay, so that is this. So that's an important distinction. The overall porosity cannot contribute towards the movement of moisture within the soil. Only the effective porosity will contribute towards the movement of moisture within the soil. Okay, because whatever is held back by surface tension is not allowed to move away. So that is the theta r, that is the residual moisture content, right? So only this theta subscript e, or the effective porosity, allows moisture to move within the soil sample. Is that all right? Okay, so what this Brooks-Corey, what they discovered was that this effective saturation plays a role. I'll just show you a plot. Okay, so this effective saturation as a function of, on the x-axis, what you see, are you able to see it clearly? It's the soil suction head, psi. Psi is basically being plotted as a function of this effective saturation. And when you do that, of course, it's a log scale, you find that for different soil samples, this effective saturation as a function of soil suction head somehow seems to fall along some kind of a straight line. Of course, it's a logarithmic scale, so it might be so there's some kind of an exponential relationship between this effective saturation and soil suction head, or rather soil suction head on effective saturation. Okay, so this is what was observed by Brooks-Corey. And also the other thing, okay, one second. The other thing that I would want to highlight here is that by conducting a series of experiments, you know, it has also been possible to come up with a range of these different values, right, for different kinds of soil samples. Okay, so all right, maybe I'll just erase this, one second. Okay, so all of this, whatever you're seeing right now, is all coming from Van T. Chow's textbook. Okay, so so these are the different parameters that we've been talking about. Eta, which is the porosity, theta e, which is the effective porosity, the soil suction head psi, and then the hydraulic conductivity K. So all of these values for the different kinds of soil, right? Sand, loamy sand, sandy loam, etc., etc. These are the values that are obtained by conducting a series of experiments, okay, with these different kinds of soil samples. All of the information you can find in pretty much any hydrology textbook. Okay, so you go into any hydrology textbook, you may find similar kinds of tables available, which will give you all these details. Okay, is that okay? Any questions? Yes. Somebody had a question? Okay, all right, so no questions. Let's go on, and maybe we'll just try to solve one problem, and then that will probably give you a much better idea of what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, so this problem again is from Van Chau's applied hydrology textbook. Okay, so let's just read through the problem statement. Compare the infiltration rate small f and cumulative infiltration capital F after 1 hour of infiltration into a silt loam soil that initially had an effective saturation of 30%. Okay, assume water responded to a small but negligible depth on the surface. Okay, so that's the problem statement. So what kind of information do we have? We are asked to find out for a silt loam soil. Okay, for a silt loam soil with an effective saturation. What is effective saturation? SE, right? So SE is given to you. SE equal to 30%. You're asked to find out the small f and capital F. Okay, so let's just go back to that table and find what was the type of soil? Silt loam, right? So just go to silt loam and extract all the relevant values for yourself. Okay, so eta is 0.501. Okay, I'll have to go back and write back and forth. Okay, so eta porosity is 0.501. Okay, so eta is 0.501. Effective porosity is 0.486. Theta E equal to 0.486. Suction head is 16.68 centimeters. Okay, suction head psi equal to 16.68 centimeters, and hydraulic conductivity is 0.65 centimeters per hour, right? So we've got these 4 pieces of information for this particular soil sample. Okay, so can we solve for capital F and small f? Do we have enough information? After how much time does it say? After 1 hour. Okay, so after 1 hour, so T is 1 hour. Do we have all the information that we need? Do we have all the information that we need? Let me again write
Yes,
down
sir.
that equation. You think yes? Okay, so f of t equal to kt plus psi delta theta natural log 1 plus f of t divided by psi delta theta. Okay, so do we have k? We have k. Do we have psi? We have psi. Do we have delta theta? We have theta e, and we have se. Okay, we don't have delta theta. Okay, let's remember what delta theta is. Delta theta is eta minus theta I. Okay. Okay, so and you look, there's a word over here that you need to pay attention to, that initially had an effective saturation of, right? So the word initially over there that you see, that gives you the hint. Okay, so what do we do? How do we go about this? Come on, does somebody have an idea?
Find theta I, sir, first.
Yeah, how do we find theta I? That's the question.
SC equal to theta minus theta R by
One second. Let's write down. SC equal to theta minus theta R divided by eta minus theta R. Or in other words, it's theta minus theta R divided by theta E. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Okay, theta E is known. What else can we do? If you rearrange this, what do you get?
We can find theta from this.
Or which in this case, because it's an initial effective saturation, so this SE is your initial effective saturation of 30%. So in this particular case, can we not say SE equal to theta I minus theta R divided by theta E? Okay, so in other words, if I rewrite it, it will look like this. Oops, sorry. Theta I, oh, I'm sorry. Theta I equal to theta R plus SE theta E. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, I'll simplify this one more step. Okay, now I'm going to write it like this. But what are we interested in? We are interested in delta theta. We are not interested in theta I itself. We are interested in delta theta. So why don't we directly solve for delta theta? You'll see why I'm doing this. Delta theta is simply eta minus theta I, which is equal to eta minus theta r plus SE into theta E, correct? But what is eta minus theta r?
Theta E.
What is that? Theta
Theta.
E. Hey, 1 second. Have I made some mistake in the algebra?
Minus SC theta I.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering why. Yeah, correct. You're right. Did you catch that? I should have, when I do theta, eta minus theta I, it should be eta minus theta r minus SE. Oops. Minus theta r minus SE theta E. So what do you get? It will simply be 1 minus SE times theta E. Okay, so that is delta theta. Simple. Okay, yeah. Is that all right? So now in this problem, we have everything that we need right now. We have SE, which is 30% or 0.3. We have theta E, which is 0.486. So can we not solve for delta theta directly? Right now I have everything that is required to solve this problem. I have delta theta, I have K, I have T, and I have psi. Is that okay? Any questions?
No, sir.
No questions. Okay. So let's, I'll just write down the answers. I'll leave it to you to solve and get the answers. Let me just write it down over here. This is kind of an exercise for you. Let me write down the answers. Okay. So delta theta comes out to be, I'll just write down all the intermediate steps. Delta theta comes out to be 0.34. Okay. And psi times delta theta comes to be 5.68 centimeters. Okay. And you do the successive substitution and all that, starting with the initial guess of K times T. Okay. You keep doing that. Right, you can implement this in Excel or something, whatever you want to do. Okay, it's not all that difficult. So apparently after you do all this iteration, you will get a value of f of t, capital F of t, equal to 3.17 centimeters. Okay, so you can solve for capital F. So the cumulative infiltration after 1 hour is 3.17 centimeters. Okay, now how do we get, so the problem statement says compare the infiltration rate F also. So after 1 hour, what is the infiltration rate? That is the question, right? So how do we solve for small f? Do you remember? How did we obtain small f? The original expression that, no, you don't have to derive it. I'm sorry, you don't have to differentiate it. If you go back, let me just quickly show you. When we started off this entire discussion, oops, I'm sorry. Oops, I'm going in the wrong direction. Right? This is the expression that we used. F equal to K times psi delta theta plus capital F divided by small f. Right? That is your expression for small f. At any instant of time, small f equal to, at any instant of time, small f equal to K times psi delta theta plus F divided by F. Okay, now we have obtained F, capital F. So we can simply solve for, okay, let's just, so now that you have obtained capital F, you can simply solve for small f. When you do that, you get the answer equal to 1.81 centimeters per hour. Okay. I will leave the, I will leave it to you to work out this the numbers, but I've given you the intermediate steps and the answers, so you should be able to do this. It should not be all that difficult. And in between, I've also derived this expression for delta theta, right? This is something that maybe you can think of. It doesn't take too long. It will probably take half a minute for you to derive it if you don't memorize it. But if you memorize it, it might save you a little bit of time, right? Suppose you were to solve this kind of a problem. The relationship between delta theta and effective saturation and the effective porosity. I'm sorry. Okay. So that is as far as using Green-Ampt equation to try to understand the rate of change of infiltration, or the change of infiltration rate as a function of time, or to look at the cumulative infiltration that has happened over a given time period. Okay. This is using the Green-Ampt equation approach. All right. Okay. So now we are going to move on to another concept. This is called ponding time. Okay. So when I say the phrase ponding time, is there something that comes to your mind, or what is it that comes to your mind when you hear the phrase ponding time? What do you think it means? Anybody?
The time required to fill a pond.
Time required to fill a pond. Okay. So see, remember, we are still talking about infiltration. Okay. And in fact, if you go to the previous problem statement, you see the last statement. Assume water is ponded to a small but negligible depth on the surface. When we derived this, if you remember, we had assumed that there is a small depth of water at the surface, which is driving the moisture into the soil, right? Which is the driving force behind the infiltration. Okay. So when I say water is ponded, that means just a little bit of superficial ponding at the land surface. So when I say ponding, it's just water has started to stagnate at the surface. When will that happen? When will you start seeing water accumulate at the surface, at the land surface, if I have rain that starts at a certain time and keeps going for some time? When do you
infiltration rate is less than rainfall rate?
Infiltration rate is less than rainfall rate. Correct. Does everybody agree with that? Suppose I have a certain soil sample which has got a certain infiltration rate. Okay, and assume that rainfall starts. Okay, as long as the rate at which rainfall is happening is less than the rate at which the soil can infiltrate water, the soil will just keep sucking that water into itself. Okay, or the soil will just keep infiltrating water into itself. It is only when the rate at which rainfall is happening becomes greater than the capacity of the soil to absorb it, do you start seeing water accumulating at the surface. Does everybody agree?
Yes, sir.
Right. So now assume, this is a slightly theoretical concept. Okay. But let's just imagine this scenario. Let's imagine that rainfall starts at time t equal to 0. Okay. And let's say that it continues indefinitely at the same constant rate. Okay. Rainfall begins. Okay. So let me try to draw a plot between time and rainfall intensity. So what is the symbol that we typically use to represent rainfall intensity? What is that?
I.
Small I. Okay. So we typically use small I, and the units is usually centimeters per hour. Just imagine that there is some hypothetical rainfall event which starts at time t equal to 0 and continues indefinitely at the same uniform rate. Okay, so just imagine that this kind of a rainfall event happens. Okay, assume that it is a nice line parallel to the x-axis. Okay, so assume that this kind of a rainfall event happens. Okay, So now assume that I have a certain kind of soil which is perfectly dry at time t equal to 0. When the rainfall begins, the soil sample is perfectly dry. Okay. So what is the capacity of that soil sample to accept or infiltrate water into itself? It's what? Okay, I'm not able to hear very clearly. Can any hello? Yeah. Was that Ayub? Can you just say it again, because I couldn't catch your.
Nothing, sir. I was just reading it again.
You're reading. Okay. All right. Anyway, so the question is this: if I have a dry soil, perfectly dry soil that is experiencing this kind of a rainfall intensity, which starts at time t equal to 0 and continues indefinitely at the same rate throughout. Okay. At time t equal to 0, what is the capacity of that soil to infiltrate water? Is it high? Any given soil.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever infiltration, whatever capacity this soil has, it will have its maximum capacity at time t equal to 0.
Right.
Right? Let us say that okay, maybe I'll slightly redraw this figure. Let us say, I'll just go up a little bit more. Okay. Let us say the infiltration capacity of the soil. Okay, so this x-axis also has infiltration rate. It is infiltration rate / rainfall intensity. Let us say at time t equal to 0, the soil is having its maximum infiltration rate of whatever. No, what was that we used? FP. F suffix P was the one that we used. But let's not. Let's assume that it has its maximum potential infiltration rate. As time goes on, what happens to this infiltration capacity of the soil? As time goes on, the rainfall is falling continuously. Will the soil have the same capacity to infiltrate water?
It will decrease, sir.
It will decrease, right? It will decrease. So if you remember, we had plotted some curve that looks like this. Sorry. Some exponential curve which does something like that. Let us assume that this is the curve that denotes how the infiltration rate for that given soil will change as a function of time.
Sir, why is it decreasing, sir?
Okay, just now we discussed about the parameters that influence infiltration, right? So number one, infiltration depends on suction head and it depends on gravity. Okay, when at time t equal to 0, the soil has got all its voids completely empty, right? It has got a very high capacity to absorb moisture because it has got high suction head, right? And then as the water, if you remember the previous slides, we just showed you how this effective saturation versus suction head, right? How it was changing as my effective saturation. If you just go back, I'll just show you that. Yeah. So on x-axis, I have soil suction head, and on y-axis, I have effective saturation. If effective saturation is high, means what? What does it mean when I say effective saturation is high? When effective saturation is equal to 1, what does that mean?
All pores are filled.
All pores are filled. Correct? So look at this plot now. On the x-axis, I have the suction head psi. When all pores are filled, the suction head is lower than when all pores are not filled. You see that? When SE equal to 1, when in the y-axis, when this value reaches 1, the value of suction head, let us pick this number, is equal to 10 centimeters. Okay, for this circle over here, this corresponds to, let us say, 10 centimeters. Okay, I'm trying to draw a straight line. Okay, for some other suction, for some other effective saturation, let us say 10%. If effective saturation is 10%, look at where that intersects. The suction head is, I don't know, whatever, 60, 70, right? When effective saturation is 1, which means when the soil sample is completely almost completely saturated, very close to its maximum capacity, the suction head has become 10 centimeters. Okay, of course, this is for some given soil sample. You don't have to okay, what is the number one? Number one is fragmented mixture. Okay, so it's some geological sample. We don't need to understand the geological aspect of it. Okay, but when the effective saturation is low, which means when the soil has more voids empty, right? When Se equal to, for a given soil, this denominator will not change, right? Only the numerator can change. Denominator is a constant, correct? For a given soil sample, its residual moisture content is a constant. Its porosity is a constant. For different values of moisture content, that numerator will alone change, right? So when Se equal to 0.1, that means only 10%, the effective saturation is only 10%. In some sense, you can say that only 10% of the effective porosity has been filled. That's what effective saturation means. So when you look at that, then the suction head is so much higher. The suction head is 10 times higher almost, or 6, 7 times higher, right? So between 10% and 100% of effective saturation, my soil suction head has changed by almost 6 or 7 times. So then that is what I'm trying to say over here. So initially, when the soil is completely empty or it's completely dry, which means that effective saturation would be even lower. Se would be very, very close to 0. That is when your suction head is highest. If suction head is highest, then your infiltration rate is highest at that time. As time goes on, when the soil becomes more and more saturated, when that effective saturation starts to approach 1, then your infiltration rate will also decline, because your suction head is also going to decline, right? So that is why this infiltration rate is changing as a function of time. Okay, so this dotted line is representing the rainfall intensity. The solid line is representing the soil's capacity to infiltrate water at different, as a function of time. Okay. So now tell me, at what point will the water start to pond at the water surface, at the land surface? I'm sorry. At what time?
Intersection point.
At the intersection point, right?
In,
Until this point, the rainfall was happening at a rate that is greater than, the rainfall was happening at a rate that is less than the soil's capacity to accept water or infiltrate water. Think about this physically. Okay, the soil has a certain capacity to absorb or infiltrate water. I keep pouring water at some rate. Okay, then it just keeps accepting the water at whatever rate. But once the soil is only able to, so think of any time after this time. Let us say at this time. Okay, the soil's capacity is only this much, but the rainfall is happening at this rate, a higher rate. What will happen? The water will start accumulating at the land surface, right? So that's what this ponding means. The water will start ponding at the land surface. So that is what this ponding time is. Okay. So is it physically, can you visualize this, right? Think of any rainfall event that happens, in the beginning of the monsoon season, right? Everything is, your entire locality is, dry and, completely lacking moisture. The rain starts, okay. And then the soil just absorbs all that, all the water that's falling. But the rain keeps continuing to happen. It keeps continuing to happen. And beyond a point, the soil says, I'm not able to take it anymore. Okay, so then the soil rejects that water. You can think of it that way. The soil rejects the water, and then it stands on the surface. It may either become part of runoff, or it may just remain at the surface, depending on what the slope of the land surface is at that point. Okay, so this is kind of like a physical understanding you need to develop about. Second, you need to have a physical. You need to visualize how this would behave at this point in time. So this time at which the soil's infiltration rate becomes exactly equal to the rainfall intensity is called the ponding time, right? So let me put it like this. For T less than TP, all the rainfall is converted into infiltration. Okay, for T greater than or equal to TP, ponding starts, or in other words, runoff starts. All right, is that perfectly clear? Right? So then let me write an equation for the. So remember, we wrote this expression for f equal to k times, what is that, psi delta theta plus capital F divided by capital F. Right? You remember this equation? This is the expression that we wrote for the instantaneous infiltration rate, right? So this F is simply K times this whole psi delta theta plus capital F divided by capital F, right? At time T equal to TP, what is the is there something that we can do at time T equal to TP? What is the relationship between I and F? At time T equal to TP, what is the relationship between I and F?
Equal.
I equal to F, correct? Somebody see, you maybe you guys take turns to say, yeah, we understood, or whatever it is. If there's complete silence, I mean, I don't know what to do. Somebody just say, yes, we got it, or whatever it is. Or should I assume that?
Sir,
Yeah, okay, good. So at time T equal to TP, I equal to F, agreed? At T equal to
Yes,
TP,
sir.
I equal to F. Okay.
Yes,
So at time T equal to TP, what is capital F? Very easy. Come on. What is the cumulative infiltration? Come on. I'm almost certain you can tell me what capital F is. At T equal to TP, what will capital F be? Come on, guys. What is the rate at which
I
infiltration is
into
happening?
TP.
I into TP, right? Thank you. I into TP. So put that into this equation. Can I not write it like this? I equal to K times, and I'll write this in a slightly simpler form, psi delta theta divided by ITP plus 1. Right? I've just simply divided this entire expression by F. So it will be psi delta theta by F plus 1. Right? So I've just written it like this. I equal to K times psi delta theta divided by I into TP plus 1. So I rearrange this entire thing. I get an expression for time of ponding. TP equal to K times psi delta theta divided by I into I minus capital K. Do you agree with this? I mean, you just rearrange these terms, you will get this. It's not all that difficult. K into psi delta theta divided by I into I minus K is the expression for time of ponding Of course, there are lots of assumptions that go into this equation. It's assuming that the rainfall intensity is constant and continues for the for infinite time. So that's an assumption there. It's also assuming that the soil has a uniform moisture profile at time t equal to 0, right? That's how, of course, that is the assumption for Green-Ampt equation itself, right? We assume that this theta I is constant throughout the vertical profile of the soil and so on. Okay, so all those assumptions are there, but under those assumptions, you can come up with an estimate of what the time of ponding would be. Then you can say, if rainfall starts at this time, after, let us say, time of ponding comes out to be 1 hour, you can say that you will start experiencing runoff 1 hour after rainfall starts, if the rainfall is at a certain intensity, right? So this way we are able to estimate how much time it will take for runoff to start. How do you think these people make estimates? Like, okay, this flooding is going to happen. It is going to flood this much of an area, and it will the flooding will happen at this time. So they ask people to vacate the low-lying areas and so on. They use some kind of a model which takes into account the kind of soil, the kind of rainfall rate expected, and so on, and they come up with an estimate of how much time it will take for ponding to happen. Once ponding time is hit, then you start experiencing runoff, and then you may have your flooding and so on. So then it's a tool for planning, right? Basically, the reason you are doing all this is so that you are able to estimate at what time the flood will happen, come up with some kind of an estimate. Okay, nobody's saying this is like 100% accurate. Okay, it is to allow us to plan for for so many different scenarios, whether it is in terms of looking at flood control, or in terms of looking at when to open the gates in your reservoir, and so on and so forth. Okay, so all of these things go into of course, this is a very simple way of doing it, but usually people have much more sophisticated computer models or whatever to do this. But if you don't have anything else, at least you can do this to come up with some kind of an estimate of what the ponding time would be, which allows you to estimate how long before you start seeing runoff happening due to a given rainfall event. Okay, so I think we are out of time now. So we will meet tomorrow at 11 o'clock. All right. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. If you have any questions, just email it to me. Now I think we're out of time, so we'll meet tomorrow. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.